Okay, ground rules. No jerking off.
What?
Yep.
What? Nipples?
No.
Come on, man. Fuck, I'm just not gonna use my hands then.
Let's have a quick conversation about memory. 1,210,385. The estimated number of people who have ADHD in Canada right now. And sitting in front of you is two of them. My name's Connor.
And my name's Celsador.
And we're here to talk to you today about ADHD. So why should we care about ADHD? Studies have shown that 3 to 9% of the Canadian population suffer from this neurodevelopmental disorder. This causes impairments in executive function, making it so that decision making is impaired, but it also causes significant distraction for those individuals who do suffer from it. As we look over at our friend Celsador right here, he is currently watching Subway Surfers while listening to me. This is a common thing that you find throughout the internet right now, where people will be telling stories while there is visual stimulation and distraction in the background. But does this actually help people to focus more?
Third time's a charm.
Oh, I need a drink. Pass me one of the bottles over there. Yeah, the Captain Morgan.
Yeah, let's get drunk. That'll make this better. Don't tempt me with a good time. That's why the license got taken away. Hey, Connor.
Yeah.
I heard this stat that said people with ADHD were more likely to die. What's that about?
Well, it's actually true.
What?
Yeah. People with ADHD live up to 7 years less than people without ADHD.
7 years?
7 years.
That's a dog year!
It's absolutely true. People with ADHD live 1 dog year less, mostly because of those impairments in executive function and distractibility. It leads to unfortunate accidents like driving very often.
Oh, I get it. So I'm not more likely to die. I'm more likely to cause an accident.
Pretty much, but luckily your license got taken away a little bit ago.
Oh, that's true.
So we don't really have to worry about that.
Oh, that sucked.
Now, one of the main talking points of ADHD is actually that people struggle with memory a lot. How do you feel about your memory?
Well, I do want to apologize because I forgot to put on pants today.
That's okay.
But for the most part, I'd say my memory's pretty good.
That's great. Do you actually remember those numbers that I just told you about a minute ago?
12?
Not quite. Now, when looking at ADHD as a whole, I found that visual distraction, specifically Subway Surfers, people thought that it correlated with having an increased memory. So when doing a literature search on ADHD and memory, I came up with 4 research questions that are going to help divulge a little bit more about what memory is and where we can go from here. Question 1. How are learning and memory characterized in individuals with ADHD as compared to healthy controls? Question 2. What are the effects of visual stimulation on the memory and learning abilities of secondary and post-secondary students with ADHD? Question 3. What are the effects of auditory stimulation on the memory and learning abilities of secondary and post-secondary students with ADHD? And question 4. What are the most effective ways to improve memory for individuals with ADHD? Answering these questions can help improve the health teaching that we give to these people, and hopefully, 1, help them learn and memorize things better, and 2, hopefully increase that life expectancy through better health teaching.
So what does memory look like in us neurodivergents?
In order to understand that, we kind of need to take a step back and talk about memory as a whole. Now, we have both short-term and long-term memory. Starting at the short-term, it's called working memory, and that's either audio or verbal. And that's the information in your life at this moment. So right now, as you hear me talk, your working memory is painting a picture inside of your head. But something might send you to the past. Is there anything you can think of?
You know, Connor, now that you mention it, I am taken back to my favorite taco restaurant. I can see the enchilada. I can hear the clamor of the kitchen. Can we get tacos after this, please?
We cannot.
No!
But what we can do is we can talk about what just happened. You took that working memory in the moment and you went all the way back in time in your head to those deep files in your brain, and you did something called retrieval, where you retrieve a past memory. In order to send those files into the past, we need to do something called encoding. And that's where you take the thing right now and you place it into long-term memory. That number that I showed you earlier, that was working memory, where you remembered it for a few seconds, but you never encoded that into your long-term memory because there's no importance to it. And that's where the real crux of ADHD comes in, because people with ADHD have significantly impaired encoding. We lack the ability to actually take information in the present and lock it into long-term memory, especially when all of that information is just given through audio.
Okay, I've been taking some notes. I think I got it. We use auditory and visual information to use our working memory in the moment. Those signals in our working memory get encoded into long-term memories, or like little files in my brain. Later, when I want to access these files for important memory stuff, I do a retrieval of information and bring that information back into my current working memory.
Absolutely. And I guess you can see the problem here, because if any one of these steps is broken in this chain, you're not going to be able to retrieve that information later. And that's a real problem when it comes to ADHD.
Well, you said encoding is a problem. What about retrieval?
Actually, surprisingly, all of the studies that I looked at showed that retrieval wasn't really impaired with people with ADHD. When information actually was successfully encoded, people with ADHD were really good at looking into that long-term memory and pulling things out when they needed to. The main problems really came from audio working memory not working properly, and when we went into the encoding, a lot of information did not get encoded, especially if there was audio or visual distractions present.
So, if encoding is one of the more common disconnects for us neurodiverges, what does that look like practically day to day?
Well, there's one theory that shows that there's two different types of processing. We can either have shallow processing, so if I was to look at this water bottle and I wanted to remember this water bottle out of all the others, I might just look at those superficial features. So it's a bigger water bottle, it has just do it on the side, and those are the shallow features of this thing. But deep processing is looking at how does this water bottle relate to other things in the room? What is its overall purpose, and how can I switch my mindset creatively to be able to remember it? People with ADHD often lack this deep processing and connecting material things to immaterial thoughts. And because of that, it's been shown that deep processing leads to higher encoding, which makes sense. If people with ADHD do this shallow processing, then it makes sense that a lot of this information wouldn't get encoded. Now, I know I said that encoding was the main problem when it came to ADHD and memory, but we also need to consider working memory as well. Visual working memory has been shown to be slightly impaired when compared to healthy controls, but auditory working memory has been shown to be very, very impaired. I want you as the viewer to consider this, and we'll do it in the Q&A session after as to why you think that this auditory working memory is so impaired. Celsador, are you on medications for ADHD?
Of course not. I can't digest.
You're right. That's really disappointing, because medications have actually been shown to be significantly effective at helping ADHD individuals improve their visual and auditory working memory, to the point that they're almost at the same level as neurotypical folks.
Is that why you don't have Subway Surfers on right now?
It is, actually.
So, Connor.
Yeah.
Does this help my working memory, or does it hurt it?
The Subway Surfers?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually our next question.
Hey.
Visual stimulation seems to have mixed effects in the literature, and we need to talk about what visual stimulation means. It could be the flashing or dimming of lights, it could be pictures moving on a slideshow,
I like those ones.
Or it could be subtitles on this video right now.
I didn't notice those.
Yeah, they seem to have some effects sometimes, but only a few studies have shown statistical significance when it comes to visual stimulation. Now, did you see that video? It was a bunch of guys who are all standing around and they're passing a basketball between each other, and the goal was to count how many passes they get.
With the gorilla!
With the gorilla, yeah!
Yes!
Midway through these passes, these guys are all passing the ball around, and a gorilla actually walks through the center of the screen. And most people don't notice this.
Really?
Unless they have ADHD.
So you're saying
92% of people who have ADHD notice that there's actually the gorilla walking by.
Whoa, but do they still remember to count the passes?
They do, actually, and not only do they remember to count the passes, they actually do better at counting the passes, the intended task, than the normal non-ADHD controls.
So we're actually more observant?
Kind of. We're able to take in more of our visual field at the same time, doing an intended task, but also our visual working memory is taking in everything at the same time. Once again, we're not encoding all of that information into the long term.
It's starting to make sense now, Connor.
All of this stuff gets really interesting when we actually consider specific visual stimulations, not just taking in the entire environment at the same time. Knowing that we take in more of this stuff, how does those visual distractions actually affect us? The subtitles, the dimming of lights, those pictures on the slideshows. Do you have anything that you do that might work for you?
I watch my videos on 1.25 playback.
Well, that actually is quite interesting. It goes into a theory that every person with ADHD actually has a specific level of visual stimulation that works for them. However, that speeding up videos actually hinders a lot of people with ADHD, mostly because our auditory working memory doesn't work as well as those without it.
So is ADHD even a disorder? Because to me it kind of seems like a superpower. I can just kind of notice everything.
That brings up a really interesting point. There's one prominent theory that comes from the perspective of natural selection. People are either born as hunters or farmers. Farmers, they have to go out and do the same monotonous task every day. They wake up early in the morning and they sit there and they have to go and do section by section, tending to their crops, tending to their animals. They focus on one thing at the same time and finish that task. People who are hunters, on the other hand, they have to be able to walk and notice their entire environment. They're walking in unknown territory, hunting the animals that are around them.
Looking for animal tracks in the dirt.
Exactly, but not only that, they have to make sure that they're not being hunted as well. They have to be aware of all of the stimuli at the same time and be able to hyper-focus when that time comes. Farmers or gatherers, those people are the people without ADHD. The hunters, it's believed, are people with ADHD, and this makes a lot of sense when you reframe it into that.
Yeah, you have the wide focus on your environment, and then when you find what you want to hunt, it's all you can think about.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
It really does.
But Connor, it's 2025. I don't have anything to hunt. What do I do?
Well, in order to maximize your learning and memory, we need to make sure that you stay visually stimulated. And so this actually might be the perfect thing. For some people, this might be too much, and there hasn't been enough studies on specifically this type of visual stimulation, but finding that level of stimulation that works for you is going to help you make the most of your mind. But what about auditory? That's our next question. Let's talk about how auditory stimulation affects people with ADHD. Understanding how auditory stimulation actually affects us is really important because we know that auditory working memory is severely impaired in individuals with ADHD. Now, randomness and predictability of a sound is very, very important. Random noises such as seem to really hurt the ability of the brain to perceive what's going on around them and may act as a distraction instead. We need something consistent and stable.
Oh, that reminds me. I like to listen to classical music when I study. Is that it?
That's perfect, actually. Classical music and other forms of white noise might actually help you significantly in retaining such information.
So white noise is good, but does it matter if it's on my Bluetooth speaker or in my soundproof headphones?
Well, it doesn't matter as long as you're actually listening to white noise. The problem happens when you just use soundproof headphones. Not having any stimulation at all actually brings us way down. We need a certain level of stimulation. If I was to put soundproof headphones on you right now, you would start looking to other places to find that stimulation that you're not receiving through your auditory receptors. And that's where we really get into the damage that ADHD can cause because we look for stimulation when we don't have enough of it.
So I'm hearing I can keep bumping my classical tunes.
Yeah, for the most part. Auditory stimulation does seem to have an effect on learning and memory. It works even better when we pair it with that visual stimulation we talked about in the last question. We just need to make sure that we reach that minimum threshold so we're not looking for stimulation in other areas, and also customize it to the individual and you find what works for you. So for you, it might be that classical music, and for me, it might be a little bit of violin in there as well and just a nice peaceful cacophony of music.
Heavy metal!
Maybe not heavy metal.
All right, I think I've understood everything we've talked about, Connor. But so just like going forward, what do I take from this in terms of living with my working memory?
Yeah, so that takes us back to our last question of what's the most effective ways to improve ADHD. And it comes down to three main things, really. One, I know it's hard for you, but you need to find a way to get on a medication regimen for ADHD. It really helps with that working memory. The next thing we can do is to kind of fix some of those internal processes. So we want to improve that deep processing to make sure that we're encoding that information properly. Also reducing those environmental distractions. So for some people, that might be turning off the subway surfers when someone else is speaking. The final thing that we can do is to customize the environment to you specifically. So for some people, that's speeding up videos, that's changing the brightness in a room, that's listening to classical music, maybe heavy metal music. It could be also blurring the background of a video to make sure that the only thing you're focused on is that person speaking. Through these three things, we can start to slowly make the people who are suffering from ADHD. Are you okay?
Sorry, I want to get the tacos, so I'm getting ready to go. I'm listening.
Okay. You head out. Definitely talk to your doctor.
God, I need hands.
Now, in terms of practical significance, this literature review shows that encoding is the main problem with people with ADHD. We need to change the support systems that actually are trying to help these people. So we need to help teachers learn how to instruct about encoding and deep processing. We need to utilize captions when we're watching a video. We need to make sure that tests and learning activities have clear formatting that works for people with ADHD. And we need to make sure that there's no distractions in their environment. We cannot let people with ADHD take a test in an environment that has no auditory stimulation. That has been proven and shown to drastically affect the amount of information that people can both encode and retain. Now, there's two areas that are important in terms of scholarly significance. The literature on ADHD and memory is actually severely premature. One, we don't have a lot of ecological evidence. We don't know what happens when people actually undergo these studies in an actually practical environment. Everything done is kind of more lab tested. We don't see the effects of someone being in an actual university lecture room. The second important thing we need to talk about is medications. A lot of these studies don't actually consider how medications begin to impact people. They either group people with ADHD as only people who are medicated, or put unmedicated and medicated people into the same statistic. This is a massive source of bias and something that leads to decreased validity in all of these studies. That's what I want to do with my research. I want to look at the impacts of medications and how they actually begin to affect people in a reliable and valid way. I also want to look at the ecological validity of these studies and make sure that the research on ADHD is actually representative of secondary and post-secondary students. But that's all from me. I want you to think back to that question that I asked you earlier. Why is auditory working memory so impaired when compared to visual working memory based on the things that we talked about? Let's have a conversation, and thank you very much.
I got tacos.